When Liberty Common High School does interviews, we don't just do what I call the soft toss questions. We certainly do come out and just ask some basic education questions and basic classroom management questions, but then we really get to the heart of the matter, and that is, do you know your content? And we fire off a good series of 20 to 30 questions that are very content related and dig into the depths of their education to see if they really do know what they're proposing that they can. I'm Russ Spicer, the headmaster of Liberty.
Hi, I'm Megan Ellis. I'm the art teacher here at Liberty Common. At the interview here at Liberty Common High School, it was definitely an interview that I had to prepare for the most out of any interview I've ever had to take. And I was extremely impressed with the fact that the people I was interviewing with knew the content that they were looking for. I had to know my art history, the entire timeline, and I really had to study, and it was really great for me to just refresh what I know. And they weren't just looking for superficial, those little keywords on the praxis test that tell you, those kinds of philosophies that everybody has a general idea of. They were talking about hardcore, like your instructional strategies and your priorities. Really just getting past the shell and getting under the surface to find out what kind of teacher you really are. Content was huge. That's what gave me the impression of the school, because they cared that I knew what I was teaching about, not just how I was going to teach it. Something else that was truly amazing was that one of the people on the panel was a mom and a board member and started the school. That was just tremendous to me. I was speaking with one of the founders of the school and who had a true grasp on the
Thinking back to my interview to be teaching at the school, I went back looking at it. I wasn't a teacher to begin with, didn't have a teacher license, so a little bit concerned about how it might go. As I went in, the interview that I went through was pretty thorough. They asked me a lot of questions, not only about what I did know, and they kept asking until they got to a point where it's something I didn't know. So I knew they had a good sense of my knowledge. They also asked a lot of questions about my character and how I would interact with students. By the time I was done, I knew they had a good understanding of who I was and what I would have to offer to the school. It's something that I was very passionate about and very knowledgeable in my area, and I believe it was because of that that I got the job.
I'm Dwayne Staten. I'm the History and Economics Specialist here at Liberty Common High School. This is 9 years I've taught at Liberty and 31 years that I've been teaching. I had my interview. I was kind of surprised that there were 5 people on the interview committee, and I had worked all day that day, and the interview was at night. And I thought, oh, this will be fast, maybe 30 minutes, and the interview was about 3 hours. I was asked numerous questions about economics, economic theory, famous economists. I was asked questions about world history, about U.S. history. It was a great review to stimulate my thinking about what I had learned in the past, and it was by far the most rigorous interview at any school that I have ever.
I'm Torgan Lovely, and I've been teaching here for 4 years. I gave my interview, it was 4 years ago this month, as a matter of fact, and I got completely crushed in the interview. They asked me about converting from base 10 to base 7 and back again. I had looked at base 7 since I was 17.
Mr. Lovely really is an expert, and I've learned a lot from him, despite him being a Red Sox fan.
Mr. Torgerson, I'm a PE teacher and health teacher here at Liberty. For physical education, they asked me what were the 5 components of physical education, and I rattled them off. So not only do they challenge you, have challenging questions, but they definitely relate it to PE and health, and they had a variety of questions that just went along the lines of that.
I'm Jared Dubzinski, and I'm one of the upper school English teachers here at Liberty Common High School. And I definitely remember with my interview that it was not something that I could just kind of fill up time with words talking about educational philosophy and all my past experiences. I actually had to have an intellectual discussion about English, poetry, poets, time periods, literary eras, and my approach and opinion of these things and matters.
On our interview committees, we think it's very important to include our parents as well as board members because that's why the school is so successful. We make sure that when we make any major decision that we have the input and buy-in of the parent population, and therefore we take pride in having parents as well as board members serve on our interview panels.
The interview panel was made up of Mr. Spicer. He was just and became the new principal. I also had Dr. Everett, who was one of the founders of the school, Laurel Van Maren, who was also a founder, who also I actually had a lot of tough questions about economics. And then there was a parent that teaches at CSU, and I think a couple of other parents. I don't remember what their occupation was, but it was really some thought-provoking questions.
Interviews here were very, very tough. I actually had the opportunity to do an interview over Skype, which is kind of like a video conference on a computer, and it was about an hour and a half long, and staring at a little dot for a camera for an hour and a half was tough. So they had some rigorous questions that really challenged me, and after I was done with my interview, I felt pretty good about it. I knew my content, and I felt great about it. So
I'm Bill Krantz, a technology teacher at Liberty Common. Thinking back about not being a teacher to begin with and not having teaching certification, really looking at it, the school's looking at, do you know what you're doing? And a lot of people come from various backgrounds, various places in life. And in my case, I had a strong technology background. Really wanted to teach but didn't have the certification. That's what they were looking for. The certification really, in this case, is not necessary as long as you have all of those characteristics, the knowledge, the background, and the ability to do the job.
Well, I'm Barb Werner, and I'm in the history and the foreign language.
Dr. Werner is a great teacher. She pushes us like college students, and I really appreciate all that she does.
I do remember my first interview at Liberty, and I was interviewed by a team of Mr. Spicer and some parents, and they asked me a lot of questions about my teaching philosophy, and they asked me a lot of questions about my content, what I was expert in. So they really were trying to determine that I knew what I was talking about and that I was really qualified to do the job. And then I later had another interview with Mr. Schaefer, in which he asked me more about my teaching and so on.
It was at Liberty. This is my 8th year here at Liberty. Thinking back to my interview back in the summer of '03, I was living out in Pennsylvania, so I actually did a phone interview, and it was there were about 10 people on the phone with me. It lasted over an hour. They asked me several very detailed questions about content, about my educational philosophy. Luckily, I came very prepared. I'd read up our core knowledge about Liberty's philosophy, and I was ready to answer all the questions. They gave me tough questions, and it was long and hard, but I felt confident because I knew what I was talking about, and I knew what Liberty's educational philosophy was, and I agreed with it. And it went really well.
Mr. Kem's an intense teacher, and he's really hard, but he's a good one too.